So what makes a good visual? This is Zoltan and Éles here with another ARCHLine.XP live webinar, when we are going to show you some few tips and tricks how to make your design even more impressive.
We are going to learn a few tips and tricks. This is not a tutorial. We are going to focus on how to tell stories the best way you can with the great tools of life.
Let's take a look. So let's see a few tips of how to make a large building complex like this one a bit more lifelike. One thing that comes to mind is movement. So you want to emphasize that everything can move in a live made visual. Let's see this bus stop, for example. We have all kinds of advertisement here. A trick you can use here is that we have animated surfaces in live. What this means is that you have a material and you can actually give it a vertical or horizontal movement. So you can just define the speed and the direction, and you can get the feeling of this kind of roll-up advertisement. And if it already moves, it's just one step away to actually use a real video. Because if you do, then you can attach a video onto a surface, and then you can have this kind of TV advertisement kind of feeling. And especially if that video has sound, which might come very useful in TV screens, you can even enable that sound here, and then the software is able to actually play that sound. So you have this kind of immersive feeling with that. And also the software would show you what is the range of this sound, so you can actually visualize from where the sound would be hearable. So if you make a video, if you make an animation out of this model, then you would be able to even hear that sound playing, what you can hear right now. Now, speaking of movement, one other thing you can do is actually get people and get vehicles to move. You see on the left and on the right next to the bus stop, we have some people here, just standing and talking, but actually you can get them to move. So what we are showing now is all part of the live package, so we are not downloading any external content just yet, but we already have in the software a few human figures you can use to animate. We have versions where people just stand motionlessly, and we have versions where they are actually moving, depending on what you actually need. So let's grab Nathan, for example, and get them to stand on the sidewalk, and you can actually get him to move and walk around a path that you define. So what Éles is doing now is that he's looking around, trying to find the right way in which he's going to move to give a lifelike, busy appearance. So he's going to move from right to left along this path that he's defining now. So with these markers, he just clicks, and then assigns a marker along which Nathan would walk. So if you actually find the right way or method of walking, he could be like walking and texting, or running, jogging. So now he's just walking carelessly along this path. So with this very simple trick, you can actually make people to move in a logical manner. But it's a street scene, so you can actually get cars to move as well. And we have one car over there, and let's say we want to make it move from where we are into the distance to keep this kind of very dynamic scene. So what you can do is that you can just get an object. In this case, it's actually a car, and define a path animation for it. So you define where you want the car to go to, and then you can just define the speed for in which it's going to be moving. And you notice that when you define the path, the car actually snapped into that direction, so you don't have to worry about cars drifting sideways. It's going to face the direction it goes to, so it can go in a circle, take a corner, etc. Now, another thing, and it just comes to mind because we see that large glass surface, another very interesting and simple trick is to make reflective surfaces actually reflective. Because we have this large glass portal, you want to make sure that it reflects some of the elements we have here, because we have trees, backgrounds, human figures. So with live, you can define a plane which would be reflective, And if you want to define the range in which it's going to be reflective, you can actually do that and adjust the plane which would be reflective, and define how wide and tall it's going to be. So with this blue marker, you can just say that this particular portal over here is going to reflect the surfaces. And with this trick, you can have a much better, reaction between glass surfaces and the background in front of it.
Yeah, and actually talking about this, you can turn this on and off at any time, and this is actually something that you can use as a material feature, because this
Exactly.
true reflectivity works all around in your scene. All you need to do is just to tell the software that here I need perfect reflection, and that's it. You just click and drag it on the surface and it works.
That's right. We always emphasize that one of the strong points of ARCHLine Live is the ability to communicate with your clients. Now, the thing is that there are some tools in which you can actually show the built environment without the actual use of Live. One thing what we are thinking about is a panoramic 360 view, sort of like a fixed viewpoint from one position where you can actually take a look around and grab everything you see into one file. Now, that file in question will be an HTML, and the strong point of that file format is that any device that has a running web browser on it can open this file, meaning even a smartphone like this one. So what you can do as a designer is that you can just finish the design here, take a look around, find the right viewpoint, make one Panorama 360 file, and then send it to your clients for evaluation. So let's see how that works. So now we just left Live for a second, and now we are in an external web browser in which you can navigate around that space which we have made the export of. So again, this file could be either shown to your clients in front of the computer, two of you sit down and take a look, or you can just send it to them and then they can discover the space on their own. Pretty neat, isn't it?
So here's a pro tip if you would like to create stunning visuals. Use the camera effects. Camera effects are for each and every views. Those are the effects that you can define, and those are the field of view, exposure, actually how your image looks like. And there's a few things that you need to consider using. First things first, each and every view based on what you can see on screen. Now, for example, this is a very dark tone scene intentionally, so it needs a little more exposure than the default. Now, I have increased this from the default to quite a high value, so still I can see darks to be dark, but compared to the other areas, everything looks cool and nice. The other pro tip that I would add is that use brightness and contrast. Add a little bit more contrast, change it the way you really like. Add a little bit of the saturation, just as I did with an earlier version of this one, to boost the colors, boost the vividity, dial it up to a level where you like it. Change the white balance as well. Give it a warm tone or a cool tone depending on your selection here. And use depth of field if it's beneficial for you. For example, here, if I turn this off and I look at the scene, this corner is just too perfect. This is something that if you would create real photograph, you wouldn't see like this. It would be like this, a little bit like blurry surface like this. So everything that is closer to the camera, this really gives a filmic, a cinematic view from this view. And all I also use is the global illumination. If I turn this off, you can see everything is a little bit more flat. But if I turn this on, this gives those little things, shadows that makes them grounded, that they are really there, appearing really there. And one another pro tip, to give the perfect professional look for your exterior or interior view, use automatic lens shift to fix the verticals in your scene.
Let me just locked vertical in that.
Yeah. So let me just show you a typical issue. I would like to show a little bit more of this area, but for this I need to turn down the camera. But this way I'm changing the perspective, so my verticals are not verticals anymore. But to if I click here, I can fix it easily, and now I have a perfect professional shot.
So here we have this interior which we want to make a bit more dynamic. There's one tool for that, and especially if you have like an open fireplace or maybe candles, you can use that. It's one of the effects we have, not to be confused with the camera effects. These are actual effects like steam and smoke and fire. So what you can do is that for this fireplace, for example, you can drag and drop one of the fire flames from our library. And in this case, it's a bit too large, so you can scale it down a bit and move it to its right place. And what we could do is that you can copy paste these flames to have them more present. And one trick what I suggest you to do is that don't be just satisfied with copy pasting elements. You might need to move them a bit, rotate them a bit to make them a bit more individual, because otherwise if you have just copies of the same thing, then it would be too much uniformal. And here you are looking for a very natural effect. So what you do is that you have a couple of flames, drag them in, and from a distance you can see that it gives a very warm atmosphere. And here's another free pro tip for you. If you have a couple of flames like that and you want to turn them off and on again, you can just go to the layer manager and do that from there. So you can have several variations of the same scene with the flames on or off.
Let me show you something about lights. Obviously, if you have an interior like this, or should that be an exterior, you will have light sources. So whenever you select, you have a lamp, you have the option to turn it on or off. You have the option to change its temperature, to give it a little bit warmer tone, or whatever mood you would like to paint with this tool. You have the options to do so. But there is an interesting thing. You can paint lights using materials. If you select this surface, for example, and you go and turn this into a glowing surface, like I do now, you can tell a totally different story from the same interior. This really looks like a glowing surface without having an effective light source there. It is already glowing just having a look at that by simply using the proper material settings. And even if I would turn off the light source here, let me just go and turn this off, like that, it still looks like it is kind of having this warm tone over there. Yet I'm not having a real light source there, and this is a totally different story than the previous was.
Here's another tip about how to create environment, because without a proper background, this model would look a bit flat. You see that there's nothing around the model, so it's not giving out the best illusion. But from live, you can drag and drop any kind of sort of like a background, a panoramic background. So wherever you turn, you always see something, and that's what you want to do. You want to avoid empty spaces. You want to see something in the background, and you want to merge those things into your model seamlessly, and you can do that by adding some foliage from the live library. Now, what comes to mind is the trees that you can see just next to the building. You can just go to the relevant live library, and you have multiple versions and sizes of the same kind of foliage. It could be trees and bushes and this kind of thing. So you can just drag and drop these elements. You can have a continuous placement. You can copy paste them. And again, as always, I strongly advise to not just copy elements, but rotate them a bit, resize them a bit, make them a bit less uniform. Now you can see this empty path in front of the building, and we left that blank intentionally so that we can show you this very neat trick about how to populate things with the foliage. For this, we have something we call a foliage painter, and it looks like a paintbrush. You just brush over the area, which will be populated by elements that you can define. For example, now Ilyes is defining a grass field. He defines how thick the foliage should be, and he just drags the mouse, and things would be nicely built up with these elements. So you can have multiple things. You can drag drop things onto here. So if you want to have some kind of dry spots or maybe other kinds of elements and plants in this brush, then you can just drag the brush and it would be drawn as so. So this way you can make things a bit random. You want to again avoid uniformity as much as you can. Now another couple of things, now that we have the library open, you can have elements from it to drag and drop into your plan. So you can have potted plants, you can have lawn chairs, for example, even fireplaces. This kind of like tiny details would make things a bit more lifelike. So just to sum up, you might want to add a background which would give context to your model. You want to blend the background with your model using some foliage. Use the foliage painter and add some more external and indoor elements to make things as it is being used. If you have a large area for skies, you can actually use a couple of tools to emphasize how the shadows would play with your model. This is a very neat trick, by the way. Especially if you combine it with an animation, then you can have a nice kind of like a time-lapse kind of experience. Now let's see how that's done in just a couple of clicks. So two things happen at the same time. Ilyes is first creating an animation path, and just like with objects, you have to have a starting point, viewpoint, and then you move to the next point to define what you're going to see when the animation finishes, or this scene finishes. And the two would be sort of connected together with an animation with a defined length. So now he's playing the animation, so we see how the camera pans. but you can actually combine this with the sun position. So what you can do is that for the starting point and for the ending point, you can define where the sun will be when the video begins and when it ends, and that will be a preview, of course, and then you can actually see the two happening at the same time. So the camera pans and the sun is moving. It's a very nice, lifelike, sort of like a time-lapse kind of experience. It's always a good question, what makes an animation or walkthrough actually a good one? And I think with this project we can illustrate the sort of like the rule of thumbs, the golden rules, if you like, what to focus on. So for example, notice that we are having sort of like transitions from one scene to the other, but we are not jumping too much. We are always focusing on one or just a few aspects. For example, now we look at the table. I have enough time to talk through with my client what we actually see. So every time we focus on one detail, and even though we are in one single room, we haven't left the room, and we already have like 6 clips already, but we can show the whole thing with these mood shots. So every single scene has its own characteristics, and they are sort of like piled up on top of each other with transitions within enough time to talk through what we actually see.
I think another advice I could give in this, that always look at other references. If you see someone publishing an animation who you look up to, try to figure out how they made that shot, that animation cool, how they told the story, because in the end what you want to do is tell a story to your clients, how they will live in this interior, how they will use or get used to the apartment with what do you just designed to them, how they will inhabit the interiors and spaces and architectural designs that you actually created for them. And this is how you can tell them, this is how you can show them to always have a clear and clean series of shots stitched together in a way as you can see on screen now.
Follow these rules and your storytelling will jump to the next level.
Whenever we look around in the interiors or we look at the model that we have created, we always see materials. So a cool and realistic material is always important. Now, a great source for that, besides the project of course that you have created in your design solution, is Polyhaven and Ambient CG, for example. This is a large source of surfaces from various different areas like stone, floor, brick, wood, that you can just find here, and then you can just use them in the surfaces of your design. So keep that in mind, that whenever you would like to create realistic visuals, you have to use and you have to implement realistic fabrics and materials as well.
So how can you use these materials in live?
Well, for example, here I have this interior, this Big Apple interior, and I will show you how this looks like. And this surface here, this is actually a basic default material that we have, but it's also a PBR material. So this could be also something from Ambient CG or Polyhaven, and you can do all sorts of things with the material. You can change their reflectivity. You can fully customize them by just simply clicking on them and change whatever you want.
Okay, for example, if I want to change the direction, maybe I want to have like this herringbone kind of pattern, but in a different direction. How do I do that?
First things first, you just you can just grip this and change this value or type of value, like 45-degree angle, 90-degree angle, and it automatically and by default reflects to whatever you do with the surface. You can even change its alignment, so you can just shift it horizontally to that direction or to the other direction. And also you can of course change the size. So let's just say I would like to use a 2 times smaller value here. So I just say, okay, it's a smaller value and divided by 2,
so you can
and in both direction. And yeah, I just actually rescaled it. So very quickly, very flexibly, you can even check several different versions of the same material by changing any of those values. And then whenever you are happy with the result, then this is what you will go with. You can even save this back to the library and then use it as an iteration of the original material. So it's a very quick and very visual work that is actually necessary when you would like to have tens or hundreds of different versions in a very, very short time during the communication with your clients. Also, talking about surfaces, the same ease of changing the materials exists in the software. All you need to do when you would like to create different versions of this floor, for example, is that you find the material, or as I described earlier, you create the materials, and then you can just click and drag and see whether you like this better. There is one with this striped flooring, or this oak basket, or the other one. So it's a very, very quick work when you would like to check different versions of the same flooring or whatever surface you are thinking of in the design.
Now, the interesting thing is that these floorings that you have used, they are part of the library. So we don't even have to download these things, it's already in the software. We frequently talk about the ability to have multiple versions of the same interior or architectural model. So here we take the opportunity to talk about how to create multiple versions of the same arrangement, because we have this sofa and this coffee table here, but let's assume that we want to show our clients different configuration with maybe a sofa with a different material and a way different coffee table. So how to do that easily in live?
Let me just make a different version of this sofa. So what, just as you told, what I would like to create another sofa, perhaps with another color and another coffee table. So I just copy and paste this sofa. Now, I don't want to even put it into the same exact location. I just would like to place it nearly to the same location. So what I just do, I just place it here, and then let me just align it someplace similar. It's not even have to be something that is perfectly matching the original position. And I think I need to change its elevation perhaps, and now I'm done. So I have two sofas at the same location, and I will also place a table. Let me just go to the built-in libraries, and for the sake of simplicity, I will just simply use this table, and I will just change its scale. Let me just downscale it a bit to have a nice coffee table, and then let me just move it someplace here on this surface, and now I have this as well. Okay, so to create two different versions that I can switch from one to the other, I select the coffee table and the sofa. This is version 1. I group them. It's Ctrl G. And then now I go to the project navigator, and I will find this newly created group as a group at the bottom of the list. Now let me just rename it for being able to find it easily. This will be version 1, for example. Yeah, version 1. And then immediately I can also turn them on, off. And to be able to handle these items as one group, I just simply do the same. And I will also make a mistake intentionally so that I can show you how to fix a mistake that you might do normally during selection. I forgot to select something that is perhaps even hidden. I cannot see that.
Yes.
that stack of books I should also select. So I forgot them, and I group these together. So they appear as a new group at the bottom of the list. I turn them off, and now I realize that I forgot that. No worries. In that case, you can just click and drag and move it into the group that you have created.
You better name that version too. So
yeah, let's just do that. I just renamed this to this was version 1, version 02.
Okay, so what are the differences between the two versions?
Okay, so version 2, let me just collapse these so it's easier to figure out which one is which one. Version 2 and version 1. And now I even have the option to make it editable. Whatever appears here, I can edit, I can change how it is organized, and I can also, for example, try to find a nice material and to give it a final touch that I think I will use a textile. Let me just go with this one. Maybe it's too, it's too vivid. But what I will do, I will just change its brightness. I will change its tone to something of a darker, a brownish tone or something like that. And let me just make it a little darker or something like this. And then I think I like this as version 1. This will be version 1. And then let me just go back again. So I can, when I communicate with the client, I go back to these two groups and I say, okay, this is version 1. This is how it looks like. I can dress it up with other objects. And this is version 2. And this easily, you can switch there and back between the two versions that you have created in your design.
So with the clever management of objects and layers, you can have multiple versions of the same thing. We believe that if you use these tools, you can get your design to an even higher standard.
And if you would like to understand a little bit more, or you would like to test these for yourself, just go ahead and download the trial version and play around with these projects and the knowledge that you have just learned.
In any case, thank you very much for hanging out here with us, and see you at the next shows and webinars.